Pay the rent or get out. Those words hit me harder than the truck that put me in this hospital bed. My father stood over me, his face red with rage, while fresh stitches still pulled at my skin. The pain medication barely touched the fire in my ribs. When I said I couldn't pay him from a hospital bed, his hand moved faster than my thoughts. The slap knocked me sideways. I hit the floor, tasted blood, and felt something crack deep in my chest. "You think you're better than this family?" He sneered, but he had no idea what was coming. "My name is Imani Carter. I am 29 years old, and this is the story of how my own father tried to destroy me at my lowest, and how his greed became the weapon that finally destroyed him instead." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really helps our channel grow and allows us to release new stories every single day. The accident had happened 3 days earlier. A drunk driver ran a red light and smashed directly into the driver's side of my car. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, 27 stitches across my forehead, bruises so dark I looked like I had gone a full fight in a boxing ring. The other driver's insurance company tried to deny responsibility, claiming I was partially at fault. That was a lie. I was fully stopped at the light when he hit me. But none of that mattered to my father. To Darius Carter, I wasn't his injured daughter fighting to breathe. I was his unpaid tenant. Ever since my mother died when I was 14, my father stopped seeing me as family. I became an income source. It started small, babysitting money, after-school paychecks. By 18, I paid for my own college books. By 25, I was covering nearly all of the household bills, while he spent his money on his new wife, gambling ideas, and business opportunities that never worked. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and defeat. The nurse who witnessed him hit me suddenly found a reason to leave. That was the power my father held. People looked away. He stood 6 feet tall, built like a former athlete gone heavy, hands shaped by decades of construction work before his injured back magically qualified him for disability. Funny how that same back never hurt when he played golf every week. Behind him stood his wife Denise, clutching her oversized designer purse, fake leather, fake brand, nervous laugh trembling out of her throat every time my father raised his voice. My younger brother Malik leaned against the door scrolling his phone. 26 years old, no job, no rent, and still $5,000 in debt to me from his failed crypto scheme. And waiting in the hallway was my father's girlfriend Kiana, 22 years old, straight out of beauty school, hair extensions worth more than my monthly car payment, chewing gum like nothing in the world mattered. They all watched me bleed, and all my father cared about was the money. The rent was due on the 1st, my father said. Today is the 3rd. I was still half dazed from a concussion. I had been unconscious on the 1st day, fighting to breathe on the 2nd, and on the 3rd, my father came to collect money. $800 for the room I had been paying for since I turned 18. A room in the house my mother had half paid off before she died. A house that somehow became his alone, despite everything I remembered about joint ownership. When I told him I couldn't pay from a hospital bed, when I said maybe my health mattered more than his rent, something in his face snapped. The slap rang through the room like a gunshot. I fell from the bed. My IV tore out. Blood spilled onto the floor, mixing with the blood in my mouth. The heart monitor screamed, alarms blaring, but no one came. Denise laughed nervously. Malik smirked and went back to his phone. Kiana popped another bubble of gum. "You have 3 days," my father said coldly. "Pay up or get out." At that exact moment, our neighbor Mrs. Thompson opened the door. She had brought yellow roses, my mother's favorite. She froze when she saw me on the floor, bleeding, my father towering over me. She rushed forward to help, but my father stepped between us. "This is family business," he said. Her hands shook as she placed the flowers on the table. Her eyes met mine, filled with fear and understanding. Then she hurried out without another word. 3 days later, I was discharged with a bottle of painkillers and a warning not to strain my chest. My father allowed Malik to pick me up. Malik complained about gas the entire 15-minute drive. When he dropped me off, he held out his hand for money. I gave him $5. I needed the rest for the bus to physical therapy. The house felt colder when I returned. Kiana had fully moved in while I was gone. Her yoga mat covered the living room floor. Protein shakes filled my section of the fridge. Her flat iron sat on my bathroom counter. She taped a sign to the bathroom door that said, "Kiana's Glam Room," with a little heart over the letter I. Denise sat at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork. When she saw me, she covered everything with a magazine too fast. I caught a glimpse of my social security number before it disappeared. She laughed nervously and asked how I was feeling. I didn't answer. I went straight to my room. That's when I saw the padlock. It wasn't on my bedroom door. It was on my closet. All my work clothes, my computer, my documents, locked away. A yellow sticky note was attached to the lock. "See Darius for key? Rent first." I sat on my bed in shock. Somehow, Kiana's leopard print pillows had replaced my own. My phone buzzed nonstop. Emails from work, messages from clients, warnings from my boss. I needed my computer to work from home. But my computer was locked inside my closet. The next morning, I left for physical therapy at 7. When I returned at 9, the locks had been changed. My key didn't fit anymore. I stood on the porch in physical therapy clothes, ribs burning, turning a useless piece of metal in a lock that no longer belonged to me. Each twist sent panic crawling higher up my spine. After a moment, the door finally opened. Kiana stood there wearing my silk robe, the one my grandmother had given me for my college graduation. "Oh," she said, chewing her gum. "You don't live here anymore?" She tried to close the door in my face. I shoved my foot into the gap. Pain exploded through my injured side, nearly dropping me to my knees. That's when I saw them. My father sat calmly on the couch. Denise stood beside him, wringing her hands. Malik leaned against the wall, laughing. And sitting at the coffee table was my father's golf buddy Ronald, measuring the room with his eyes like a predator sizing up prey. They were discussing how much they could charge for my room. $800 was too cheap, Ronald said. "You could get $1,200 easy for a room that size with a private bathroom." I stood in the doorway, still dizzy from therapy, still barely able to breathe without pain, and listened as my family planned my replacement. Malik was the first to notice me. He burst out laughing like this was entertainment. Denise's nervous laugh followed. My father just looked at me with cold satisfaction. "You had 3 days," he said. "It's been 3 days." I told him my belongings were still inside. My clothes, my documents, my work computer. I told him I needed them. He said I could have everything when I brought him the back rent and a new security deposit. He had even drawn up a fresh rental agreement, $1,200 a month. Mrs. Thompson stood across the street pretending to water her garden. She watched everything. When my father stepped away, she hurried over and pressed something into my hand. $300 in cash, and a key to her garden shed. "You can stay there tonight," she whispered. My father returned and saw her standing too close to me. He threatened her openly, right there on the sidewalk. Said he would report her son's food truck to the health department. Said he would make up violations until it was shut down. Mrs. Thompson's hands trembled. Her family's business was everything to her. She apologized to me with her eyes and backed away. I signed the rental document with shaking hands, not because I intended to pay it, but because I needed access to my own life. My father said I could return the next day with money to retrieve my belongings. That night, I slept on a folded blanket inside Mrs. Thompson's garden shed, surrounded by tools and bags of soil. And instead of crying, I started planning. The first phone call I made was to a credit card company. They told me I owed $5,000 on a card I had never opened. The second said $3,000. The third said $7,000. All in my name. All opened in the past 6 months. All mailed to my father's address. Denise had stolen $15,000 of my future while smiling at me across the breakfast table every morning. The next week, I officially became homeless. But I was no longer blind. My friend Tasha let me sleep on her couch. Her apartment was barely bigger than my father's walk-in closet, but she never complained. She worked night shifts as a nurse, so we passed each other like ghosts, leaving notes on the coffee maker, sharing silence instead of space. One afternoon, I saw a post on Kiana's social media page, a casino selfie. My father at the slot machines, Denise beside him, Malik grinning. And around Kiana's neck, my mother's pearl necklace. The one that had mysteriously disappeared after the funeral. That was the moment I decided to go back. The window to my old bedroom had been loose since I was 16, the night I snuck out to a school dance my father had forbidden. I used a butter knife, just like before. My ribs screamed as I climbed inside. The room looked like a disaster zone. They had taken what they wanted and left the rest scattered like trash. My work computer was gone. But beneath the floorboard, where I had hidden it years earlier, my old, cracked laptop still waited for me. Then I went to his office. The safe was still behind the same ugly lighthouse painting he had owned for 2 decades. The combination was still my mother's birthday. Even in betrayal, my father was predictable. Inside, I found the truth. A life insurance policy worth $1.5 million, paid out when my mother died at 39. The terms stated clearly that the money was meant to be held in trust for her children, accessible at 18 for education and living needs. We never received a single dollar. Not me, not Malik. But the worst discovery waited beneath the documents. A letter from my mother's doctor dated 1 week before her death. It warned her of a dangerous interaction between her heart medication and a specific supplement that could cause fatal rhythm failure. That same supplement bottle lay in the safe. Prescribed 2 days after the warning. My hands shook as I photographed everything. Offshore transfers, fake disability filings, tax records, conversion of trust funds. Then I heard the front door open. I barely had time to return the papers and slide a single USB drive into my pocket before footsteps climbed the stairs. I escaped through the back door seconds before my father entered his office. The USB drive was a blueprint of 15 years of crime. And that night, sitting at Tasha's kitchen table, I made the call that would change everything. I called my mother's sister, Aunt Rochelle, the woman my father had banned from our lives after the funeral. She answered on the second ring, and when she heard my voice, she started crying. I have been waiting for this call for 15 years, she said. 2 weeks passed after my eviction. The bruises on my body faded from deep purple into sickly green. Tasha said I looked like a living painting, layers of pain slowly drying into scars. We kept a routine. She'd leave me coffee and a note before work. I'd leave her dinner and updates from my investigation. Aunt Rochelle arrived from Boston with boxes she'd kept hidden in her attic for years. Letters, photos, legal papers my father thought were destroyed. We met at a diner 2 towns over, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee strong enough to burn the back of your throat. She slid a box across the table. Then she told me the truth. My mother had been planning to divorce my father. She already had a lawyer. She had documented his first affair, his gambling habit, his money problems. The first court date was scheduled for 2 weeks after her death. The heart attack came first. Her lawyer was still alive, Richard Holloway. We met him in an office that smelled of leather, dust, and unfinished justice. He studied everything I brought, the photos from the safe, the USB drive, the credit fraud records. Then he leaned back and said the words I had been praying for. "We can bury him." But I needed more than promises. And my father handed me the final key without realizing it. He had kept me on his car insurance for a multi-driver discount. That gave me legal access to the tracking data from the safe driver device in his vehicle. The same device that proved he had been driving to job sites for 5 straight years while collecting disability payments for being unable to walk. Meanwhile, Denise grew fearless. She opened 3 more credit cards in my name. She used them to fund her new business, selling essential oils. She even listed me in her sales network to collect commissions off accounts I had never seen. Malik posted my grandmother's stolen jewelry online for quick cash sales. The pearl necklace, the wedding ring, the family brooch. He was desperate. Kiana called me drunk one night, crying. She had found proof my father had another girlfriend, barely legal. She wanted revenge. What she gave me instead was ammunition, videos of him counting illegal cash, recordings of him practicing his fake limp before doctor visits, screenshots of dating profiles where he claimed to have no children, and one final gift, photos of him coaching his new girlfriend on how to open cards in her mother's name. The agencies moved quickly after that. The whistleblower report to the IRS, the disability fraud packet, the identity theft charges, the trust fund lawsuit, all of it triggered at once. And my father still thought he was in control. The IRS whistleblower program offered a percentage of whatever they recovered. And my father had been hiding money for more than 15 years. By conservative estimates alone, he owed over $400,000 in unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest. And that was before the offshore accounts were even factored in. The police were focused on the identity theft. $15,000 across multiple credit cards. All in my name, all felony charges. The Social Security Administration launched their own investigation. 5 years of fraudulent disability payments. $230,000 in stolen government funds. But the most dangerous charge of all was the one tied to my mother, the stolen life insurance trust. Richard Holloway filed quietly at first. Every document was aligned, every transfer traced, every lie mapped out with dates and signatures. My father had remortgaged the house using forged documents. He had drained my mother's retirement accounts using fake power of attorney. He had sold her car to his friend for $1, then bought it back for $1 to dodge taxes. Even my job wasn't safe from him. One afternoon, my coworker Brielle called me in tears. My father had contacted my company directly. He told them I was a drug addict, that I had stolen from the family, that my hospital injuries were from an overdose episode. He even sent them a photo of me on the hospital floor after he hit me. By the end of that week, I was fired for job abandonment. While I lost everything again, my father felt untouchable. He turned my old room into a short-term rental and advertised it online as a cozy family home. Mrs. Thompson sent play-by-play updates. Your father bought a new truck. Denise got hair extensions. Malik was beaten last night. Kiana moved out. They're still spending like nothing's wrong. They were burning stolen money like gasoline on a collapsing bridge. But the system had already noticed. The first domino fell on a Monday morning. My father's bank account was frozen. His card was declined at a wholesale store in front of a line of customers. He screamed. He threatened employees. And Mrs. Thompson recorded everything from her phone across the parking lot. By the end of that week, certified audit notices arrived at the house. Malik signed for one, thinking it was a package. When my father read it, his hands shook so badly the paper tore. The audit covered 5 full years and would expand once fraud was confirmed. Which it would be. Because I made damn sure of it. The IRS whistleblower program offered a percentage of whatever they recovered. And my father had been hiding money for more than 15 years. By conservative estimates alone, he owed over $400,000 in unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest. And that was before the offshore accounts were even factored in. The police were focused on the identity theft. $15,000 across multiple credit cards, all in my name. All felony charges. The Social Security Administration launched their own investigation. 5 years of fraudulent disability payments. $230,000 in stolen government funds. But the most dangerous charge of all was the one tied to my mother. The stolen life insurance trust. Richard Holloway filed quietly at first. Every document was aligned, every transfer traced, every lie mapped out with dates and signatures. My father had remortgaged the house using forged documents. He had drained my mother's retirement accounts using fake power of attorney. He had sold her car to his friend for $1, then bought it back for $1 to dodge taxes. Even my job wasn't safe from him. One afternoon, my coworker Brielle called me in tears. My father had contacted my company directly. He told them I was a drug addict, that I had stolen from the family, that my hospital injuries were from an overdose episode. He even sent them a photo of me on the hospital floor after he hit me. By the end of that week, I was fired for job abandonment. While I lost everything again, my father felt untouchable. He turned my old room into a short-term rental and advertised it online as a cozy family home. Mrs. Thompson sent play-by-play updates. Your father bought a new truck. Denise got hair extensions. Malik was beaten last night. Kiana moved out. They're still spending like nothing's wrong. They were burning stolen money like gasoline on a collapsing bridge. But the system had already noticed. The first domino fell on a Monday morning. My father's bank account was frozen. His card was declined at a wholesale store in front of a line of customers. He screamed. He threatened employees. And Mrs. Thompson recorded everything from her phone across the parking lot. By the end of that week, certified audit notices arrived at the house. Malik signed for one thinking it was a package. When my father read it, his hands shook so badly the paper tore. The audit covered 5 full years and would expand once fraud was confirmed. Which it would be, because I made damn sure of it. The disability investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The tracking data from my father's insurance device showed his daily movements for years. Job sites, supply stores, casinos, construction warehouses. All during the same period, he was officially declared unable to leave his bed. Kiana's video sealed it. Him lifting heavy furniture. Him jogging across a parking lot. Him practicing a painful limp in front of a mirror, then forgetting and walking normally seconds later. The total came back at $230,000 in stolen disability payments. Plus penalties, plus potential prison time. But the biggest crack in the wall came from Malik. He couldn't handle the pressure. Once he learned my father had committed tax fraud in his name by claiming him as a dependent for 8 years, Malik realized he was facing charges too. That fear broke him. He agreed to testify. He admitted everything. that he knew about the trust fund, that he helped hide cash, that he knew the disability was fake, that he watched our father drain accounts while we took student loans. And then he told them something no one expected. My father had a second family in Florida, a woman, 2 children, 10 years of stolen money, 10 years of lies. That revelation brought in the federal authorities, interstate fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. My father went from a local criminal to a federal case overnight. Meanwhile, my own life was quietly rebuilding. The side project I had worked on for 3 years finally launched. Phoenix Financial Recovery, an online consulting firm specializing in tracking stolen money and exposing financial fraud. The irony was not lost on me. I pre-sold enough contracts to cover my expenses for a full year. Clients lined up. Systems activated. And while my father scrambled to save his collapsing empire built on theft, I built mine on truth. Mrs. Thompson sent updates every day. Your father tried to sell his boat. They won't unfreeze anything. He's yelling at everyone again. New girlfriend moved in. They're still pretending nothing's wrong. The silence before destruction always sounds like confidence. But behind the scenes, the government was building a case brick by brick. And my father had no idea how close the walls were to closing in. The media found the story before my father ever saw the final wave coming. A local reporter picked it up after the very public lawsuit service at the golf club. She interviewed Mrs. Thompson. She tracked down former co-workers who knew the truth. She even sat with Kiana, who showed up to the interview wearing my mother's recovered pearl necklace, the same one I had bought back from the pawn shop and given her as a thank you. The headline went live the next morning. Local man accused of stealing dead wife's trust and abandoning injured daughter. By evening, it was national news. My blog traffic exploded. The servers crashed twice in one day. Women from all over the country flooded my inbox with stories that sounded painfully familiar. My father tried damage control. He went on local radio and claimed I was a bitter liar seeking attention, that I was unstable, that I fabricated everything. The host played a recording. My father at his disability hearing, claiming he couldn't stand for more than a minute. Then they played video from that same day. My father carrying a refrigerator up a flight of stairs for cash. The studio went silent. Then my father started screaming. Threats, lawsuits, insults. The station had to censor nearly every sentence. The meltdown turned into a viral clip by nightfall. Someone remixed it into music. It reached 1 million views in 3 days. The IRS auction was scheduled for a Saturday. I attended in person with cash in my purse, ready to reclaim whatever pieces of my mother's life were being sold. The auctioneer recognized me from the broadcast. He had lost his own mother young. He understood exactly what this meant. Every emotional item went to me for the minimum bid. Her china set, $1. Her wedding album, $1. The wooden rocking chair she used to hold us as babies, $1. Other bidders noticed what was happening and stepped back. One woman cried openly. She hugged me afterward and whispered that my mother would be proud. My father watched from his car. He could not legally approach because of the restraining order I had filed after he showed up drunk at Tasha's apartment, pounding on the door and screaming my name. He watched his life disappear one object at a time, unable to stop it. The trust fund lawsuit judgment arrived the following week. $2.1 million in restitution with interest. The IRS wanted over $600,000. Social Security demanded $230,000. Total debt exceeded $3 million. Bankruptcy could not erase fraud. And for the first time in his life, my father had nowhere left to run. The financial collapse came first. The criminal charges followed fast behind it. Denise took a deal. 18 months in exchange for full cooperation. She handed over recordings of my father planning fraud, coaching her on how to hide money, teaching her how to manipulate banks. Criminals never trust each other forever. Malik received probation, mandatory counseling, and 10 full years of wage garnishment. The judge ordered him to repay every dollar he had stolen from me. He got a job at a car wash, the exact place my father used to make fun of. The irony felt surgical. The second family in Florida filed their own lawsuit. The woman had been told my father was a widower with no children. She had lived off his payments for years, believing the money came from construction contracts. It was stolen money. Their lawsuit added emotional distress and fraud to his growing mountain of charges. Federal prosecutors stepped in. Wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, interstate fraud, elder abuse. Everything stacked. Everything stuck. The trial date was set 3 months out, but the damage was already irreversible. My business grew faster than anyone expected. Phoenix Financial Recovery signed its first major corporate contract, then another, then another. Within weeks, I hired my first 2 employees. Within a month, 5 more. Within 6 weeks, we had recovered over $2 million for clients. My story spread through networking groups, legal circles, survivor communities. People trusted me because I had lived it. While my father was preparing for prison, I was preparing payroll. Mrs. Thompson sent me a final update about the house. Foreclosure. The payments stopped. Everything he had built using stolen money collapsed into public auction. And then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Thompson's son bought the house, the same one my mother had helped pay off. He had saved quietly for years. He turned it into a community center for elderly immigrants. Language classes, legal help, food drives. And at the front entrance, he placed a small plaque. In memory of Lena Carter, it read, "A mother taken too soon." I stood across the street and cried. For the first time in years, my childhood home belonged to kindness again. The investigation into my mother's death was quietly reopened. No one made any promises. The supplement had been legally prescribed. The timing was suspicious, but without absolute proof of intent, no murder charge could be confirmed. Still, the truth hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in town knew what my father had most likely done. His reputation was finished. The golf club revoked his membership. His favorite bar banned him for life. Even grocery store employees suddenly ran out of whatever he asked for. He became a ghost while still breathing. I hired a forensic accountant using part of the recovered trust funds. What we found was beyond anything I imagined. Hidden accounts in the Bahamas, cryptocurrency wallets under fake names, gold coins buried in the backyard like some paranoid pirate's treasure. Every cent was seized. Every asset was liquidated. Every illusion of power stripped away. My book deal came through that same week. A real publishing house, a real advance, enough to buy a home outright. I chose a quiet Victorian 3 blocks from Mrs. Thompson's house. A wide front porch, tall windows, a garden in the back where I planted yellow roses, my mother's favorite. The first night inside my own home, I sat alone on the porch swing and cried. Not from grief, from relief, from safety, from the strange quiet that comes when survival is no longer your only job. Phoenix Financial Recovery expanded faster than any projection. We opened a second office, then a third. By the end of the year, we had helped recover over $50 million for clients across multiple states. I hired women like me, women who had been financially trapped by family, women who had escaped abusers, women who needed a second chance, and I paid them well. Tasha became my operations director. I doubled her nursing salary on her first day. She cried in my office and hugged me so hard, I thought my ribs might crack again. I also launched something even more personal. The Lena Carter Fund for Financial Freedom. Emergency housing, legal support, financial counseling. The first 10 grants went to women under 30 escaping family financial abuse. One of them opened a small bakery that donated leftover bread to shelters every night. The ripple had begun. And my father was about to face the storm. My father's criminal trial began on a gray Monday morning. By then, he barely looked like the man who once ruled our house through fear. His hair had gone streaked with gray. His shoulders sagged. His eyes darted around the courtroom like a trapped animal searching for escape. Federal charges filled the docket. Wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, interstate fraud, elder abuse. The state added identity theft, financial exploitation, and falsification of legal documents. The prosecution had everything: bank records, video evidence, witness testimony. Malik took the stand. His hands shook as he spoke. His voice cracked when he admitted he helped move cash, that he knew the disability was fake, that he watched our father spend trust fund money while we struggled to survive. Then the Florida woman testified. She described 10 years of lies, how she believed she was building a future with a widowed businessman, how she raised 2 children on stolen money without ever knowing the truth. Her voice broke when she said she still had to explain to her kids where their father really was. Denise testified next. She wore prison gray and no longer laughed. She handed over recordings of my father describing how he outsmarted the system, how he moved money, how he used his own children as shields. The evidence crushed him. But the final blow came when the hospital security footage was played. The slap, the fall, the blood. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge looked away. My father's defense tried to claim grief and stress. The prosecutor answered with receipts from casinos, boats, luxury hotels, and girlfriends purchased within days of my mother's funeral. The jury deliberated less than a single day. They returned with guilty on every major count. My father did not look at me. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly safe. The sentencing day arrived faster than I expected. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Former neighbors sat in silence. Strangers who had followed the case online waited to see the ending. My father stood in his jail uniform, wrists cuffed, shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, he looked small. The judge read through the charges slowly. Every crime, every victim, every year of deception. When she reached the trust fund fraud, her voice hardened. She spoke about children who had gone without while their inheritance was spent on gambling, boats, and mistresses. When she mentioned the hospital assault, she paused. She looked directly at him. "You left your injured daughter homeless," she said. "That alone would warrant punishment." Then came the sentence. 15 years in federal prison. No possibility of early release for the first 5. The room erupted. Some people gasped. Some cried. Some whispered prayers. My father's knees buckled slightly, and for a brief second, he looked directly at me, but I felt nothing. The judge allowed victim impact statements. I had prepared mine for weeks. My hands trembled as I stood. I spoke about losing my mother, about paying rent to my own father, about sleeping in a garden shed after being thrown out while injured, about rebuilding with nothing. Then I spoke about Phoenix financial recovery, about my employees, about the foundation, about the women whose lives had already changed. I ended with one sentence. "You tried to bury me, not knowing I was a seed." The judge nodded. My father said nothing. Denise was already serving her sentence. Malik avoided my eyes, and just like that, The man who controlled my life for 15 years lost everything in 15 minutes. Denise began serving her sentence immediately. 18 months. No deals left to make. No money left to hide. She found religion inside prison within the first few weeks. She became the chaplain's assistant, organizing prayer circles with the same frantic energy she once used to host oil-selling parties. Letters from her started arriving at my new address. Apologies, prayers, requests for forgiveness. I sent them all back unopened. Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. Malik's punishment followed a different road. Probation, mandatory addiction counseling, and 10 years of wage garnishment. He worked at the car wash during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. The humiliation broke him first. Then it reshaped him. For the first time in his life, he learned what exhaustion really meant. Months later, a letter arrived from him. No excuses, no requests, only accountability. He admitted he had been jealous of me our entire lives, that our father had trained him to expect everything while I fought for scraps, that standing by during the hospital assault would haunt him forever. I wrote back once. I told him forgiveness was a process, not a gift, that I was watching. The Florida family never recovered what they lost emotionally. The woman took my father to civil court and won. Her children entered therapy. We spoke once, quietly, without bitterness. We bonded over the strange grief of loving someone who never truly existed. Phoenix financial recovery reached numbers I once thought impossible. Corporate clients, legal partnerships, national recognition. My team grew past a dozen employees, many of them women who had escaped financial abuse just like me. We built careers together from the ashes. My blog turned into a book. My story turned into fuel for others. The community center in my old home flourished. Mrs. Thompson's son filled the house with voices again. Language classes, legal workshops, shared meals. Where fear once lived, healing now grew. Sometimes I visited, not to remember the pain, but to measure how far I had come. And just when I thought the story had finally exhaled its last breath, the prison called. The call from the prison came 2 months after sentencing. My father had been attacked by other inmates after they learned what he had done. Stealing from your dead wife is one thing. Stealing from your own children makes you a target. He survived, but was placed into permanent protective custody. Isolated, alone, afraid every single day. I felt no satisfaction, only emptiness, and that emptiness felt like freedom. Malik continued working, week after week, paycheck after paycheck. He paid back more than half of what he owed within the first year. He started attending recovery meetings. He stopped lying. He stopped asking for shortcuts. He even sent me a photo once, him and a quiet woman from his meetings sitting on a park bench at a free concert. For the first time, he looked peaceful. Denise never wrote again. The silence stayed clean. The shout I heard from inside the past finally faded. The greatest surprise came from Kiana. She had escaped before the collapse, but months later she contacted me again. She had been groomed, lied to, used, and now she was trying to rebuild her life from scratch. I helped her quietly, not for him, for her, because breaking the chain mattered more than revenge ever could. My company passed $1 million in annual revenue before I turned 30. From a garden shed to a boardroom, from a locked closet to a financial empire. The foundation expanded into 3 states: emergency housing, legal funding, financial protection. My mother's name lived on through every woman we saved. Standing in my garden now, surrounded by yellow roses, I finally understood what healing felt like. Before it was survival. Now it was peace. If you listened to the end, thank you. It means more to me than you know. And before we finish, if you're still here, write in the comments, where are you watching us from? I'll read every message. I lost a family built on fear and inherited a future built on truth, and I would never trade that victory for anything. For another story that fits your mood, click the video on the left. To hear the latest one, choose the video on the right.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment in the story has touched your heart, brought you some reflection, some emotion, and hope. Thank you for taking the time to experience it with us, and hope that each next story will always accompany you on your life journey.